Good day, dear learners. I welcome you in the next lecture that is related to climate change, global warming, and we'll be looking into the causes and effects. So, first, let's have the overview of this particular uh, lecture that I'm going to share with you, what you're going to learn. So, by the end of this 30 minutes, you'll be able to define what climate change is, what global warming is, and greenhouse effect, the three important concepts that will be talked about in this lecture. And then, of course, explain the natural anthropogenic causes of climate change and global warming, examining the environmental and the socio-economic impact of these two phenomena, and suggest the measure and policies that help to reduce the greenhouse gases emission and mitigate climate change. Okay, so let's begin. Now, first coming to the two terms which we use in our daily life: weather. How good is the weather? Or the climate of this particular city is not good, or it's not congenial. We use that in our daily life. So, what it actually is weather and what is climate? So, the first thing, or in a very simple manner, weather refers to a very short term condition of the atmosphere at a specific place at a specific time. That is why we have weather reports, right? Weather news. And in climate, it's a long term. Basically, it's an average pattern of weather in a particular area. And usually, the longer period would be around approximately 30 years. That actually tells us what the weather is in that typical region. And of course, there are other ways to classify as well. You can see in this image. Now, moving forward, now what is climate change? Now, climate change refers to any change that is taking place in the state of the climate that persists for an extended period of time, right? Which typically changes uh, from its normal climatic condition. So that is why we say the climate is changing. Now, it could be because of the natural reasons like, solar cycles, volcanic eruption, persistent different natural phenomena that are taking place. Or it could be because of the anthropogenic activities, which also causes a lot of change in the atmospheric or land use. Now, once the climate is changing, which we see right now, that the global the rising of temperature, which ultimately causes the glaciers and polar ice to melt, which further leads to the increase in the sea level. And if you connect the dots, then when the sea level is rising, there will be a lot of risk of flooding in the coastal areas, and the climatic condition or the weather patterns will become very unpredictable. There will be very frequent heat, droughts in some area, very heavy rainfall, stronger storms, and so on. And of course, that will have an effect on the agriculture, water resources, ecosystem, and human health as well. So, what are the causes of climate change? But now, this is a image which actually talks about which cause is more responsible for causing climate change. By looking at it now, you can see the natural causes is now becoming very light, and the heavy part is the anthropogenic causes. Now, it is extremely likely that the anthropogenic activities have dominated and are the major shareholder in causing the climate change or the global warming. So, if you look at the natural factors, of course, like I said, all the natural phenomena in which we have no control over can cause climate change. For example, volcanic eruption. In even the ocean currents that are passing, because that the ocean current, they redistribute heat across the planet, right? With cold water moving towards the equator and warm water moving towards the pole. And of course, this also influences the atmospheric CO2 level. Now, here I would like to state a very classical example of volcanic eruption. How can volcanic eruption causes climate change? Because see, when the volcano is eruption is taking place, there are a lot of releasing of sulfur dioxide, water vapor, and ash and dust into the atmosphere. So the classical example I can give is of June 1991, Mount Pinatubo of Philippines. It erupted, and this becomes the famous example of how Because of the volcanic eruption that took place, it released approximately 15 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. And when it released that especially into the stratosphere, and it stayed, all the aerosols stayed there for a longer period of time. So it temporarily cooled the earth because it was, disrupting the rays. It was causing a blockage. So definitely the earth, it got cooled by approximately zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius, around in the between the years of 1991 and 1993. For 2 years, we found that this kind of a climate change in Philippines. So natural factors also causes climate change. Then solar radiation, how the earth is tilt, that also, we can say, the orbital change also, it changes the, it affects the climatic conditions. So less tilt leads to cooler summers, milder winters. If there is more tilt, warmer summers and colder winters. So this also causes the strength of the seasons also depend upon the earth orbital and the solar radiations that are falling on the surface of the earth. Now, coming to the anthropogenic factors, are human activities. Of course, first is the burning of the fossil fuels, which releases a lot of, gases into the atmosphere. We have seen that in the previous lecture as well. Then we talked about deforestation, cutting down of trees on a large scale, because trees are the sink of carbon, that's taking in the carbon dioxide. So once you're cutting down on the trees, so who will absorb the CO2? So then definitely the CO2 level will start to increase in the atmosphere. Then industrial emissions also, they also release CO2 and other greenhouse gases, which ultimately helps in trapping the heat in the troposphere. Then agriculture, livestock also, because methane and nitrous oxide is released from livestock and fertilizers, which ultimately contributes to climate change. Then urbanization, how the city is expanding, urbanization is taking place, factories are being established, commuting, transportation, all of them are releasing, the different emissions are taking place, and there is a rise in temperature. Then waste generation and landfills also produces methane gas, which is an important greenhouse gas, which ultimately causes climate change. Then transportation, how the vehicles, cars, buses, and aeroplanes, they burn fossil fuels and release CO2 into the atmosphere. Now, effect of climate change, what happens? First, it comes the rising global temperature, how the temperature rises, because of which it causes, frequent heat waves and warmer climate in many of the regions of the world. Then there's melting of glaciers, right? And now you can easily connect the dot. There's melting of glaciers, so definitely there will be rise in the seawater level. Once there's a rise in the seawater level, it will ultimately lead to extreme weather events that are taking place. And we are witnessing that right now. There will be impact on the agriculture because of, unpredictable rainfall and drought-like conditions that are taking place. That will also create food security challenges as well. Then ultimately, even our biodiversity will be struggling and will be affected by the climate change, and which would lead to habitat loss, migration of species, and sometimes even extinction of the species. Then water scarcity is also there because the rainfall pattern is changing, and the places which were initially, initially had a lot of rainfall, they became subjected to drought-like condition, and this unpredictable rainfall pattern also causes scarcity of drinking water or shortage of fresh water. Then effect on human health as well, because it affects our respiratory health, and also different heat related illness is also being spread because of the climate change. Ocean also, when it becomes warm, it absorbs a lot of heat, and of course when it's absorbing heat, CO2 is also being absorbed, and as a result, what is happening? The ocean is becoming acidic in nature, and it is affecting the coral reef and the marine ecosystem. And there is also socio-economic impacts, how the displacement of people are taking place, how the infrastructures are being damaged because of climate change, and of course that is leading to the economic losses as well. So climate change, you can say it's a broader term that includes global warming, as well as other long-term changes in the climate pattern. But if you look at global warming refers specifically to the increase in the Earth's average surface temperature. And of course, for the global warming, greenhouse gases and accumulation of greenhouse gases is a must. So we have CO2, we have methane, and nitrous oxide, which is the three main, you can say, greenhouse gases. Of course, there are many others also, and they all, when they get accumulated in the atmosphere, it leads to global warming. Now, what is greenhouse effect? Now we have to understand now greenhouse effect. Now, try to imagine. I know the thing that we talk about greenhouse effect is these greenhouse gases are increasing and it's causing global warming. Now, the first thing that should come in your mind is, if all the greenhouse gases were removed from the earth, so will our earth become a better place? So the answer is no. We do need greenhouse gases, because these greenhouse gases are basically helping maintaining the earth's temperature. And of course, if it were to remove, the earth's temperature would would plummet from, you can say, around minus 18 degrees Celsius. And this dramatic drop of temperature that will take place would basically freeze the surface water, and it will plunge the entire planet into permanent lifeless, like a deep freeze zone. So we do need greenhouse gases because it maintains the average temperature. But the problem is, if these gases, they're exceeding the limit, then it becomes a problem for us. So the greenhouse gases, they're basically trapped in the atmosphere. The ultraviolet rays, remember, there are two important radiation that you should remember: ultraviolet rays and infrared rays, which are the two types of invisible electromagnetic radiation located at opposite ends. So these are, ultraviolets are shorter wavelengths and they have high energy. They enter the surface. So when they enter the surface, stratosphere is helping them. The ozone layer is helping them. So they are causing less damage to us. And when it is reflected back, it is reflected back as thermal infrared radiation with longer wavelength and lesser energy. So what happens is, when it is reflected back, because of the different greenhouse gases which have exceeded the limit, it traps the gases inside, it traps the heat inside, and which ultimately stops it from escaping into the space, and as a result, it causes greenhouse effect, or you can say global warming. Now, this is a very interesting, it will help you to remember also the major greenhouse gases, and you can look into the source also. It's from the Climate Kids NASA, and in a very illustrative manner, they've explained about the major greenhouse gases. So starting with CO2, how the CO2 structure looks like, and how the CO2 is the main cause of Earth's warming temperature. Then methane, it has 1 carbon and 4 hydrogen. So there's the formula, and how it is released by wetlands, landfills, and cattle by different activities of growing rice, burning natural gas, and so on, and which ultimately becomes methane becomes the second contributor of Earth's warming temperature. Third interesting gas is nitrous oxide, which is also known as the laughing gas, and it is also used in the medicines to help people fall asleep. So it is also added into the air by different factory release, power plant, and plant fertilizers, and which becomes the third largest contributor of Earth's warming temperature. The fourth greenhouse gas is water vapor. Now, water vapor is present everywhere, right? It's evaporating. It's present everywhere, and this water vapor basically, you can say, it traps the heat. So the more the water vapor is in the atmosphere, it will start trapping more heat, and which will add to the Earth's temperature or Earth's warming as well. So the greenhouse effect is a natural process in which certain gases in the atmosphere, they trap the heat from the sun and keep the earth warm. So ultimately, the Earth's average temperature will rise, which will lead to what we call as the term global warming. So there are several causes of global warming, of course, and we usually talk global warming in a negative sense, like how the warming is affecting us, the plant community, the human community, and the animals. And of course, they're caused both by the you can say the natural causes and the anthropogenic causes as well. Now here are this is there are two studies that I'll be presenting in front of you. The first study is related to the scientific studies which carried out, and in which the researcher, they analyzed the major global temperature data set, and they found that the warming rate is now 0.35 degrees per decade, compared with less than 0.2 degrees per decade between 1970 and 2050. So this shows that the Earth is warming faster than before. Another interesting study which also indicate that the last decade, that is from 2015 to 2025, includes the warmest year. So the global temperature in 2025 were already are about 1.42 degrees Celsius, that is above the pre-industrial levels as well. And of course, these findings show how quickly the climate system is changing. So the average temperature is no doubt increasing at a very high rate. So the natural causes are the volcanic eruption, the water vapor that are present because of the water cycle. It is naturally present in the atmosphere, which which adds to the global warming. Then another interesting fact is the melting of the permafrost. So the permafrost is a frozen soil that has the environmental gases trapped in it for several years. So once the ice melt, the gases are released. And when the gases are released, of course, they will be trapped in the Earth's atmosphere, and that will lead to global warming. Then, of course, forest fire, how the large amount of CO2 is being released, and which results in the global warming. Now, coming to the anthropogenic causes of global warming, needless to say, you can now count the human activities on your fingertips. First is the deforestation, large scale cutting of trees for n number of reasons, and when the trees are being cut, the CO2, the absorption of CO2 is being affected. Then, of course, the use of vehicles, chlorofluorocarbons that are released from our different gadgets, from air conditioned refrigerators, which damage the ozone layer. So you see, and if it is being damaged, the harmful ultraviolet rays that was entering into our atmosphere and being protected by the ozone layer now we are being exposed to those ultraviolet rays as well. Then industrial development, that is another anthropogenic cause of climate change because of harmful emissions from factories and industries. Then agriculture also, how the different farming activities, they produce carbon dioxide and methane gas, and which further adds and increases the temperature of the earth. Not to mention overpopulation. Now our country is the first populous country in the world. So more the people, more the demand of each and everything, you can say. So when there's a demand of industries, there's demand of more agriculture produced, and urbanization is taking place, houses are being built, mining activities are taking place, n number of activities are taking place because of the overpopulation, and it is putting a lot of burden on the resources, and ultimately by using the resources and not in a judicial way, it is increasing the level of carbon dioxide, which is the primary cause of global warming. Now what will happen if the global warming is taking place? So what we have seen in climate change, the same effect we'll see during the global warming. The first thing, that because if it is warm, the first structure or the first component that will suffer would be the ice, melting of ice and increasing of sea levels, which ultimately lead to extreme weather like condition. And also I talked about ocean acidification, how the concentration of CO2 will be absorbed by the oceans, and when it is absorbed, carbonic acid, the acidity of the ocean will increase, and that will cause harm to all the marine life, the coral reefs, and the sea shellfish as well. Because remember, the shell of those or the skeletons of these marine organisms, they are made of calcium carbonate, so it will react with the acid. Then spread of different diseases, all the waterborne diseases will also take place because of heat and humidity. Then high mortality rate will be also there because of increasing floods, tsunamis, and other natural calamities as well. Then it's not only human beings, but there will be loss of habitat, natural habitat as well. So we find that a lot of animals, they need to migrate from their natural habitat, and many of them will become extinct because of the extreme weather condition or global warming. Now coming to the last part of the lecture, in which I'll be talking about what will are the major policies on climate change and global warming. So the first policy is the UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which aims to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration and prevent dangerous global warming. Then when we have Kyoto Protocol, Kyoto, K being silent, it's a legal binding agreement which was basically the agreement was signed by the developed countries, which committed themselves to reduce the greenhouse gas emission to limit the global warming. Then there's Paris Agreement in 2015, in which the countries aim to keep the global temperature well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5. Then we have Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is a scientific body that assesses climate change research and provides reports to guide global climate actions, policies and actions. Then we have National Action Plan on Climate Change. This is India's main climate policy that includes missions to promote renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate adaptation as well. Then we have India's nationally determined contribution, that is NDCs, which is basically you can say commitment which comes under the Paris Agreement, which aimed at reducing emissions intensity and increasing clean energy use as well. So to conclude, what have we seen in this lecture of ours? We have seen that the climate change and global warming are among the greatest, you can say, the environmental threats of our time. And of course, their major driving force are the anthropogenic activities such as fossil fuel consumption, deforestation, industrialization, and urbanizations, right? And what we have seen, how the effects of climate change and global warming are the same. If it is the rising temperature, the melting of ice, sea level rising, and extreme weather-like condition, which threatens the biodiversity, the agriculture, and the human health. So addressing these challenges requires urgent global action. How? Through sustainable practices. We have renewable energy adoptions, we have forest conservations, which ultimately help us to reduce the greenhouse gases to the limit or to such an extent that it is not harming us no longer. But we do need the greenhouse gases, remember that. So through awareness and responsible actions, society can help reduce the impact of climate change and protect the planet for our future generations. So these are the references which you can refer for all the detailed reading regarding climate change and global warming. This will help you out. And thank you all for your patience listening. And I'll be meeting you again in my next lecture. Till then, take care of yourself and have a nice day.